For today's video, we will be discussing about functions. Okay, so first, let's have a scenario first. So let's say you are working for a computer vision company, and your supervisors have tasked you to write a C program to pre-process 1,000 images and to separate the foreground from background. So it's what you also call as background segmentation. So essentially what you are just doing is to just take relevant parts in the image and discard the irrelevant na parts. So aside from before you can properly separate the foreground from the background, here are the other tasks that you have to do. So for 1,000 of images, you have to do resizing, and then you also have to increase the contrast or the sharpness of the image, and then you apply thresholding, and then you apply masking. Okay, so these tasks require you to perform repetitive tasks for 1,000 of images. So, however, this will result to a long unreadable na code. So, let's say you have a task, resize, increase, apply thresholding, and apply masking. So, each of these tasks are in itself complex. So, for example, just resizing the images that could result to like 3 lines of codes. So in one run, would you repeat those 3 lines of code for 1,000 images? So or that you have to increasing the contrast or sharpness. That's not, you cannot perform that in only just 1 line. So you have to there are 2 or 3 lines to perform that task, right? So and later on, if your code is not organized or all of these tasks are just put in, let's say, one one long complex na code, so that will be difficult for you to debug, right? So for example, there is an error of your code, so you're wondering what could have gone wrong. And then if you change one line of code, and then that will further affect the other parts of your code. So yeah, so the debugging will be very difficult. And so what you can do is to instead of putting all those tasks in only one big na code, what you can do is to break down the code into smaller chunk, right? So each of the task, the resizing, the increasing the brightness or increasing the sharpness, applying thresholding and masking, will have its own code with its own declarations and statements. Okay, so aside from main, you can divide the program to several more tasks or several more methods. So if something goes wrong with your code, so you know which chunk you will debug on without necessarily affecting the others. And well, that could also save you a lot of time from creating more bugs. So we can do this using functions in C. Essentially, C functions are building blocks of programs in C. So it's essentially a small program with its own declaration and statement. So using functions, we can divide a program into several pieces that are easier for us and also for others to understand and modify. So it also allows us to avoid duplicating code that's used more than once. So for example, the resizing of images, you don't have to, let's say you have 3 lines of codes for resizing images, you don't have to repeat those 3 lines for 1,000 of images. So you can just reuse that resize function that you have defined. And also functions are reusable. So we can take a function that was originally part of one program and use it in others. So for example, the resizing of images, it's a task that you don't only do for background segmentation. Let's say you are given another task to perform perform machine learning experiments on those set of images, right? So, and you can reuse the tree size na function that you have defined from another task that you have that you are working on. Okay, so uh, so where does the term function come from? So yes, it is from mathematics, and you have encountered this one in your Math 17 na class, right? So, but in C, functions don't always resemble math na functions. So in C, a function doesn't necessarily have arguments, nor does it necessarily compute a value. Okay, so our programs so far have consisted of just the main function. So from lectures 1 to 8, you have only encountered the main function. Okay, so but in a C in a program, it could contain one or more functions. But of course, one must be main. Okay, so because every C in a program begins executing at the function main. So this is this example. This main function is the most basic na function that you have encountered so far. Okay, so in this lecture, we will see how to write functions other than the main, and we'll learn more about the main itself. Okay.